UFOs, monsters, mysteries. You're listening to Talking Weird. And now, from a cabin deep in the Northwoods, your hosts, Dr. Dean Bertram and Jen Durrell.
Well, hey, baby.
Well, hey, baby.
How's your night going so far?
It's going okay. How about yours?
Good, other than my rascal daughter is still awake second week in a row, and that I have my adopted cat, Valet, has decided to climb the window screens and screen door behind me. So if anybody hears little clawing or pitter-patter of feet, it might be a cat or it might be my daughter. Either or, they're both mischievous. So I'm looking really forward to tonight's episode. Actually, it should be a really good one, I think. Yeah. Our guest tonight, he served 21 years in the U.S. Army as an airborne military policeman, honing the type of investigative and survival skills that would serve him in his many later adventures in exploring the paranormal. He has been published in several magazines, is a regular guest on the cryptid and paranormal convention circuit, and is the author of a number of popular books, including Legend Tripping, The Ultimate Adventure, and the follow-up guidebook, International Legend Tripping, Adventure Outside the Box. So I'm delighted to welcome to the show, Robert C. Robinson.
Hello.
Hello.
Greetings, Robert. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Well, let me say thank you for your service before we kick off as well. 21 years, that's quite a time.
Yeah. Yes, it was. Most of it went by pretty quick, but yes.
I was thinking, actually, I had another opening question, but it just occurred to me just before we rolled into the show. When you were serving in the military, did you experience anything paranormal or hear tales of anything paranormal in that 21-year stint?
When I was in Germany, we went to a couple castles that were supposed to was supposed to be haunted, and like we went to Frankenstein's castle one time, and we went up there one time. I went with some friends, and during Halloween they set up a haunted house type up there, like not as like Universal Studios, but you know they did a really good job up there. But we went up there one time, and the caretaker showed us around, and we had some weird, noises going on, and he just kind of looked at us and he goes, "That's not supposed to happen." So I said, "Wow, this place really is haunted." And he goes, "Yeah, I think it is." And we said, "Well, when we went to leave, he says, I might go with you guys back down."
I'm sure he didn't want to stay in there. And
he didn't. He was a little shaken up. He's like, I could tell that he had never really experienced that before, and he's just, it was funny. But needless to say, we had to leave him there.
Well, yeah, when your guide gets scared in the haunted house or the caretaker gets scared, you're in real trouble.
Yeah.
There's something about old buildings. When I've traveled to Europe a couple of times, and whenever I'm sitting in, like there are pubs in the UK, which I'm from Australia originally, as my accent probably betrays, but there are pubs in the UK not just older than Australia, which is a very young nation, but even older than America. And you're sitting there or in a bar in Europe, and you're like, this building is older than the actual country that I live in. And there's always that sense of the possibility of something happening in a location like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, because I'm my mother's from Edinburgh, Scotland, and so we used to go. And her parents later moved to Harrogate, England, and so we would go back and forth with me, growing up there. So I got to go to quite a bit of places in England, like Fountains Abbey and areas like that. So, and a lot of them had a reputation for being haunted.
Oh yeah.
That's one of the things I like most in your book, actually, is you say your mother's from Scotland and you got to go to Loch Ness as a kid. I'm jealous. How exciting was that?
Yeah, it was, but we didn't get to stay long. We didn't, I mean, I always tell my wife, it's at the top of our bucket list. And if we do go again, or I'm taking her, of course, we're going to stay there. We're going to stay at a hotel. We're going to stay overnight. We're going to get to really take, I think we were there for about 2 hours, and and I wanted to stay longer, but they're just like, you're not going to see the Loch Ness monster, and we're all getting tired. We're getting cold. Let's get back in the car and leave. And I was like, oh, bummer.
You know what? I grew up like you did on In Search Of, and that iconic imagery of the surgeon's photo of that monster coming out of the water. Those things haunted me in both a good and a scary way when I was a child. It drove an obsession for me, but they were things I was genuinely scared of. Like I'd watch In Search Of, always eagerly awaiting it, but then I'd always be creeped out at night. It's funny to hear that set your tone as well for your interest in the paranormal.
Oh yeah. There was a movie called The Legend of Boggy Creek. It was a 1974 documentary about a Bigfoot type creature in a small town of Falk down in Arkansas near the Texas-Arkansas border. And I remember going to see it. In fact, I didn't even know what we were going to see. My dad said, we're going to the drive-in. We're going to go see a double feature. Load up in the car. So we got there. And I saw Legend of Boggy Creek, and I don't even remember what the second movie was. We got in there, got our spot, and little brother said, hey, I want some popcorn. And my dad said, take him, get him some popcorn. And we got over to, the stand, and I saw the poster of The Legend of Boggy Creek, and, which actually you can see it right behind me, too. I have a copy of it. But in it, there's a large, hairy creature coming, and at the bottom it says, this is a true story. And I'm just like, what the heck is this movie? What did he bring us to, So we go back to the car, and it came on, and here I am watching the movie in the back seat with just my eyes poking over the top watching it. And it's a very, very inexpensive movie if you've never seen it, but the director did an awesome job bringing out the attitude and it's a scary documentary. And then after we left and went home, I just, the whole time I'm thinking, what if this thing left Falk, Arkansas, and it's in my backyard now, waiting for me to get home, I mean, I'm only 12 years old, so, and then we get home and my dad said, take the dogs out back. And I'm like, I'm not going back there, So I grabbed my little brother and I'm going to take him with, because the way I figure, I can run faster than my brother. So if it's back there, it'll get my brother and I'll make it back. Needless to say, it wasn't back there, but it left a big, it left an impression on me. And then my uncle was telling me stories about it, and I went to school, and the teachers introduced me to, Charles Fort's book, as well as Ivan T. Sanderson and many others, and I just progressed from there. And lucky, then lo and behold, the In Search Of show came on. And in '76, we went to a museum in Gatlinburg, Tennessee called World of the Unexplained. And lo and behold, there's a TV screen right when you walk to the entrance, and there's Leonard Nimoy introducing you to this museum, which had, featured things from the TV show. So, I mean, but definitely In Search Of was, in fact, I have the whole DVD collection. Right?
Oh, wow.
In fact, I'm looking at it right now.
I need to buy that, actually. When you talked about that museum in one of your books, I think it was the first one. I think it was just legend tripping. I was super jealous I never got to go to that museum. It sounded like it was just incredible.
It really was. In fact, it was kind of the way I found out. We went to one of those visitors stops when you come to the border of each state. And they had pamphlets from all the, the attractions of the state, and there it was. And but what the funny part to it is, because there was on the advertisement, they showed a nude lady statue of it. It was called a nude witch, and I said, I'd like to see this. So anyway, when we got in there into Gatlinburg, I said, and lo and behold, it was right downtown. And I said, I want to go see this place, not telling my parents why I really wanted to go in there, And my dad said, well, take your little brother. And we went in there, and I forgot that I had left the pamphlet in the car. So we went in there, and lo and behold, we're looking, and it was a fantastic museum. And it's owned by Ripley's, Ripley's, believe it or not. And we got right to the end, and by then, I guess there must have been a lot of complaints, and they had covered up the witch, you know, and she was decent for younger, you know, people coming in there. But I turned around and my mom was storming in there because she knew why we wanted to go in there, and she's just, you know. And my dad, of course, comes up and says, "Yeah, your mom says you're trying to see some, you know, naked lady." And I'm just like, "No, Dad, there she is. She's got clothes on." And it is, okay. But they had a statue of Bigfoot in there. They had a UFOs. They had a werewolf. I mean, it was a cool place. I wish they. I understand Ripley's had one in San Francisco too, but you know, I got lucky enough to go to the one in Gatlinburg.
Yeah, funnily enough, when I was a kid and I came with my dad on a business trip to America, I went to the San Francisco one. And I'll tell you, I never told this story on air. It wasn't anything like the one you described. That wasn't filled with paranormal stuff. It was cool, but it wasn't that more paranormal one. That was obviously the one you went to. But I remember myself and my younger brother, I must have been about 10. He must have been about 6. They had one of the fattest twins in the world actually sitting outside the building. And he was a big man. I mean, a big man. And me and my brother were, as little kids do, we were kind of looking at him and snickering, and it's terribly mean, but kids will be kids. And then he called us over, and I remember me and my brother going over there thinking he was about to say, "You shouldn't make fun of people, mate. It's not good." And he said, "Would you kids like a sticker?" And he gave us both a Ripley's Believe It or Not sticker. And I felt about this big. I felt just like the most terrible human being in the world. And I think that probably taught me not to make fun of people at a young age, because I'm such a lovely man. But another story in your book, though, which I was also super jealous about, talking about Boggy Creek like we just were, was you went to Falk, Arkansas, and you got to go to some of those locations with Lyle Blackburn as your tour guide. Almost.
Yes. Oh, yes. Me and Lyle, I always say Lyle's like a brother to me. I mean, when we met, we hit it off, and we've been friends ever since. And you know, we kind of got what they call the Boggy Creek Bunch, or the Boggy Creek Mafia. And they said, yeah, I told me one day, I said, "No, you're part of our little Boggy Creek group." So oddly enough, I did visit it as a kid. When I was with, we stayed with my uncle one year when my dad was stationed in Korea, and he lived in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and he used to travel around on the truck, and every so often I would go with him. And I remember one time we were driving, and he nudged me. I fell asleep. He nudged me awake. He goes, "Hey, you remember that movie, The Legend of Boggy Creek?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "We just passed through it." And I was like, "Oh my God, you couldn't stop for me to see it and stuff." Well, I didn't say that. My uncle's one of those people, you know, you don't get belligerent with them at any, you know. So I just went, "Okay, well, maybe someday." But yeah, when I got there, you know, Lyle took me around and showed me everything, and I tell you, it's a neat place. I just recently found out I've been invited to go in June to speak at the Boggy Creek Festival they're having in June down there. So,
oh wow,
that sounds
fun. I am. I'm excited. I've been to the third one. Was it the third one I got to go to? And they put me up in a hotel and everything. And Craig Wohlheater, Lauren Coleman, Lyle Blackburn, and some others. And I tell you, we had a great time down there. And the Smokey Crabtree, the gentleman that was actually the technical advisor when the original movie, he has since passed away, but I got to meet him. Oh, and wow. It's a neat little place. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's not too far from like the Texas-Arkansas border.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I've driven through Texarkana, but I've never gone to Falcon. I wish I had the last time I did that trip. One day.
Yeah, it's not very big, but I mean, they do have the Monster Mart. So I mean, it's back, you know, like I said, when I was a kid, the Monster Mart was just a small little gas station, and unless you were just looking out what's that expression? If you blink, you miss it. At that time, that was pretty much Falk, Arkansas. You know, there really wasn't much to it. And I mean, it's grown now, but the Monster Mart, which has a gigantic monster, the Falk monster sitting on top. I mean, there's no doubt that, you know, you're not going to miss it when you go through it now.
Oh, I'd love to go there. And speaking of Lauren Coleman, as you just did, you got him to do the foreword for the first Legend Tripping book. That's fantastic.
I did.
Can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with Lauren and how you made that happen?
I've known Lauren for quite a while. I've donated some stuff to his the International Cryptozoology Museum, and he invited me to speak at the very first International Cryptozoology conference he had down in St. Augustine, Florida. I used to go to him a lot of times for, I say, Lauren, I'm doing this. What do you think about this? And, he kind of, was a kind of a mentor in some aspects,
Nice.
And then I did a book, Legend Tripping, with a different publisher, and unfortunately, it wasn't the right publisher. She was a nice lady, but she really didn't understand what it was we were doing. And the book I put out then was a disaster. It missed the mark. And I remember I sent it to Lauren, and he said, "You lost your audience in this book. You went off on the tangent on being a parent." Parents don't pick up a book to be told they're bad parents. They want to know how to be a good parent, where to take them so they can be a good parent. And that was my first introduction to writing, And later, David Hatcher Childress from Ancient Aliens, if you've ever watched that show, he got a hold of me. Somehow he got a hold of my book. And and he said, "Hey, I got a hold of your book, and it's okay." And I was just like, "You can go ahead and tell me. I've been told, I'm." And he says, "I'd like to redo it. I would really, because you missed the mark." And that's actually the first time somebody said, he said, we got to go focus back into Legend Tripping, not the parent. Let's take all this parent crap out. Let's take it all out, and I want you to expand. You kind of you were on a roll and you just stopped. Let's redo it. And every time you finish a chapter, I want you to send it to me, and I'm going to look it over. I'll red pen it, and we'll go back and fix it." And the second book that came out, which is the one that you read, Dean, is the result of that. Which if David hadn't stepped in and being the editor and the guiding force in that book, it would never, have happened. And, I always joke to people, I can die a happy man now that I put out the book that I wanted to put out.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And then he contacted me later. He says, so what are you going to do for a second book? And I'm just like, wow, I didn't even think that one all the way through. He said, "Well, your book's doing good, so what are you going to do for an encore?" And I was like, He said, "Well, you think about it and get back to me today."
Yeah. No.
Yeah. This is all emails too. This wasn't, So I was sitting there and I said, "Wow, so what's bigger than Legend Tripping in the US?" And I said, "Wait, the whole world."
Yeah.
So, and then I went about, and I've been overseas to certain places, so I have a little bit of experience. And then David's been to some, a lot more places than I've been. And in fact, the international is a lot thicker than internet, than Legend Tripping. And I had a hard time stopping because it just kept going on. I mean, and like Australia, I was so taken back how many haunted places are in Australia. I mean, I knew England was, and I expected Germany, all that, but I was really taken back how, it's almost like Australia had more than England did.
I was impressed as an Australian how much Australian content was in that book, actually.
It just didn't stop. I mean, and I have a friend of mine to help me do the Yowie part, and he said, "Hey, do you need any other?" I said, "Well, I'm also doing it on, all kinds of legends." And I would find a legend, I'd contact him, and some of them he didn't know. He goes, "Oh, I didn't know about that one. Let me look it up too," And then, of course, when we got to the survival part, I was going over about different animals and snakes, and Australia has the most poisonous snakes out of any country. And I was like, "Holy cow!" And I get asked my friend, I said, "Dude, you have the most poisonous snakes?" And he's like, "Yeah, mate. In fact, I can't go outside."
It's funny. I tell my little
That's
daughter,
great.
she's interested in spiders at the moment. And me and my mother, who was talking to her on Skype, told her about the funnel web spider. And she sees little spiders in Wisconsin. I mean, other things will kill you here, but probably not a spider. But and she was amazed at how funnel webs will actually rear up to fight you. Like if you go to tread on them, they're not like a normal spider scurrying away. They're like a tank. They just want to go, you know. But you know, before we go too far, I should have asked this at the very beginning. It's been so wonderful talking to you. We just gone on this wonderful tangent. But maybe you should tell people what the term legend tripping actually means who aren't familiar with your books.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to read what Wikipedia. Legend tripping is a name bestowed by folklorists and anthropologists on the adolescent practice in which a usually furtive nocturnal pilgrimage is made to a site, which I thought, you know, it's more or less to me, it sounds like a Scooby-Doo adventure, you know, or a Hardy, you know. I didn't like that, and I came up with my own, which is starting to, you know, take people are grasping it, is to go on an adventure and do research and investigation into a legend, either local or, you know, otherwise, you know, because there's legend. People are surprised how much legends are in their area. And of course, when you travel to other areas, there's always, you know, legends in that area too, you know, I mean, and I was just really, it's something like I said, I got into as a kid. You know, when I was young, I tried to in the military, but unfortunately, sometimes they send you over to places where, you know, like Afghanistan, and you know, you don't really get to do any legend tripping over there, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, I always kind of, you know, I always read. I was, even though, you know, I was deployed and all that stuff, I was always reading about, you know, the unexplained and all that stuff. But I did put that definition and I sent it to Wikipedia, and it was up for a while and then it disappeared again. But yeah, but they still have me down in the credits, you know, because of my book and stuff. But because and I do have people, you know, walking up to me, oh, you're the legend tripper. And I said, okay, I'll own that. I can go with that. You know, but there's a lot of people like Lyle Blackburn. He's a legend tripper. Ken Gerhardt, he's a legend tripper. Nick Redfern, again, another legend, because all it has to be for a legend tripper. You know, I always say, I always tell people, see, I'm not a cryptozoologist. I'm not a ufologist. I'm not a paranormal investigator. I'm a legend tripper because I like to go investigate all that stuff. And once you branch out of, you know, cryptozoology and going to the paranormal ufology, now you're a legend tripper. So
that's actually leads into something I wanted to ask you. You being somebody who isn't just a cryptozoologist or isn't just a ufologist or isn't just a specter hunter or a paranormal investigator, it's something I saw a little bit more of in your second book, I think, where you were commenting on some entities and saying it's difficult to work out where to slot these, like a hellhound, for example. I think you said, should this be in a more physical chapter or should this be in a more ghostly one? As somebody who has this broad understanding or broad experience in researching across the many aspects of the paranormal, for lack of a better term, do you think there are aspects of it that merge that other researchers mightn't like to look at? For example, Bigfoot is something I know there's a school of thought that suggests maybe Bigfoot is more paranormal, or in the words of, I think Greg Newkirk said, Bigfoot is a ghost, for example. Do you ever encounter that when you're looking at these things? Maybe that some of the things thought of as a physical as something else?
I haven't I haven't seen anything of that nature yet, but I have done plenty of research, and I have, you know, talked to people. There's, you know, some researchers out there with the belief that these Bigfoot is actually extraterrestrial.
Yes.
Because there's been times and places like up in Pennsylvania where they've seen some strange lights in the sky, and later on they've seen a large hairy creature in the area. You know, again, I haven't seen that, but I don't rule it out. I always tell people I keep an open mind, but I don't keep it so open that my brains fall out. You know?
Does that affect, say, let's go to hellhounds, for example. Would that affect the way you might do an investigation or a legend trip? Like if you were unsure you might take, I'm assuming, a different approach if you thought it was just a physical cryptid compared to if you thought it was a supernatural manifestation. Like, it must require a different investigative kind of technique, I'm guessing.
I guess you start off with the witness and the statement. You know, the witness's report of what they saw, and of course you go out to the area and you investigate it. Again, if you find footprints, you obviously have an animal that possibly, you know, is more physical than it is, you know, a apparitional, you know, full.
Yeah.
So I guess that's how I treat it. I always, but you know, there's been stories where people have seen Bigfoot just up and disappear in front of them.
Yeah.
And there's stories where they've seen these animal Bigfoot, like, again, go into what appears to be a vortex. So, I mean, there are plenty of unique stories out there. Again, on my part, I haven't seen that. At this time, I would presently treat the whole Bigfoot creature as a flesh and blood creature until I see otherwise.
Yeah.
But I do listen to people's reports. In fact, there was a lady back in the 70s, Ramona Clark Hibner, down here in Florida. And she was a big Bigfoot hunter, or here in Florida, they called the Skunk Cape, which she did not like the term Skunk Cape. She called it a Yeti.
Yeah.
So, but she was getting reports where people were seeing lights and then also seeing this creature. So at first she just kind of pushed the UFO aside. She didn't want to get into that part, but she did say, you know, I got to a point where I couldn't ignore it. There was reports of, you know, UFOs and then reports of Bigfoot sightings. So, I mean, it is out there. It still happens. I think that would be cool to be out there and see, you know, one of these animals come out of a flying saucer, you know?
Yeah.
As far as the paranormal goes with the Bigfoot creature, again, that's something I have to see. I do know up in Nepal they treat the Yeti in a kind of a supernatural aspect as well. They kind of view it as a spiritual creature, I guess is a term they to use for it. And it, you know, they say it has the ability to make itself disappear as well and stuff. So, but I guess, like I said, back to it, it's what the evidence looks like when we get out there after we get the report, and then we go from there. If it looks like we're dealing with a flesh and blood creature, we'll head into the cryptozoology type of investigation. And if it doesn't, but the lady's fully animate, and again, we think that you know, there's something to her statement, you know, because I've met people who I don't believe they really saw anything. They were just trying to get on TV. Where I have met some people who I wholeheartedly believe saw something they couldn't explain.
Right.
And again, it's an emotional thing. And again, I when I interview a person, I like to ask them to tell me the story 3 times, because a person who has seen it will not veer off their story by any iota.
Very true.
3 times. Whereas for a person who's making it up to get on TV, you can catch them. And that's what I learned when I was a military policeman, about when you interview people.
Yeah. So have you had a lot of more people that were lying to you than you had of legit, or was it?
Unfortunately, I you know, as far as the reports I've had more people who I think were, and I always say they're trying to get on TV.
Right.
But I have got some that, you know, I had a gentleman, it's kind of a funny story, because I teach at a high school, and a young man came to me in 2012, right after Thanksgiving, and he said, "Hey, my dad saw the Skunk Cape out at the Green Swamp," which is north. It's east of Walt Disney World, just to give you guys an idea where the Green Swamp is. And he actually filmed it on his cell phone. And I said, "Oh, I'd love. Could you have your dad come in and see me? I'd like to, you know, or we could meet at a restaurant, whatever is easier for him." And he said, "I'll talk to him, but he right now he's not in good shape talking about it. It really messed with him pretty bad." I said, "Oh, okay." So whenever he's want to talk, come see me. Well, lo and behold, 2 weeks later, he came in after school, And he sat down and he told me the story how at Thanksgiving morning he was on a tree stand out in the green swamp, 6 o'clock in the morning, and there was a light mist covering this palmetto field, and this thing came walking out, which he thought initially was a hunter in a ghillie suit. And he saw it walk out and stop, and he looking at it, and he's like, "That's not a hunter." So, and he knew the story of the Skunk Cape. He knew the story of Bigfoot out here in Florida. And he took his cell phone and he had a little flip top phone, and he pointed it over and he started filming it. And the thing turned around, looked right up at him. And he said a chill shot down his spine. He went, "Oh my God, that's a real animal. That's not a guy in a suit." And he stopped filming because he didn't know if the animal was going to come charging at him or, whatever. So luckily it went the other way. It went running out to a different direction. And he got on the phone and called his son and his dad to get over. And his son pretty much took over the story there. He said, "Yeah, we couldn't get him to get out of the tree stand. He was so petrified on something, And this is a guy who's been hunting for 30 years, knows every animal. And, they said they said it took about half an hour to get him to, well, they said it seemed like an hour, but it was actually about half an hour. And then when he got to the house, he said, my dad went right to his room and just laid down and was just like, it had really messed with him.
Yeah.
And, that's the kind of thing because when people really see this thing, it is a life-altering event. And I've noticed that when I do talk to people who I think legitimately saw it, they can tell you everything they did that day. I mean, it's amazing the detail of the things they can tell you. And they never falter. I had a lady saw one in a tree stand. She was sitting there and she fell asleep. First time hunting, her husband put her in a tree stand, took off. She fell asleep in the tree stand, woke up, felt something pulling on the ladder, looked down and saw this large, hairy creature looking up at her with reddish hair and a very human-looking face. And she said they looked, and again, when she's telling me the story, she's crying and she's, really emotional. And her husband has to fill in the gaps on the story. But she started screaming for her husband and it walked off. And I said, "Did it run off?" She goes, no, it walked off. I said, "Was it big, huge, and muscular?" It says, "It wasn't huge, but it was muscular." It said, it like a Bigfoot in good shape. Like he had been to the, on aerobics, But again, she could just, the detail that she could, say, and it never faltered on that. And of course, I asked them if they could show us where it happened, and that wasn't going to happen. The lady said, "I am never going." Oh, she said, "Oh, I'm never going back in the woods again after that whole thing." So
it's interesting the amount of hunters who have those kind of experiences. I'm quite familiar in the literature. I wasn't familiar with either of those, but I'm quite familiar in the literature, the broader paranormal literature, of lots of hunters experiencing things and sometimes feeling threatened. Of course, in David Paulides' Missing 411 Hunters one, he talks about, I think it's Bruce Maccabee's wife, who's out bow hunting in a tree stand. And she sees something which is almost like a predator type creature moving, something that, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Missing 411 for a couple of reasons.
Yeah, I've met David too.
Oh, okay. I don't know David at all, but that's interesting that you have.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that something that worries you when you go out at all ever? Do you think we're going to an area which, has the potential for a disappearance or something to happen?
No. I mean, bottom line, I don't really, I go prepared. I'll be honest, I don't take firearms with me. I take bear mace. And I go, if you read my book, I have never been in a survival situation, and I attribute that to the fact that I always go prepared when I go in the woods. Even if I'm going on a day hike, I'm prepared to stay overnight if something happens. I have a first aid kit and stuff, and I don't like to go in the woods by myself. I always think, it's good to have somebody with you when you go out there, and I always make sure people know where I'm going. But I mean, I've been to areas where people have disappeared, to find out, I met David. He's a nice guy. Doesn't really have much of a sense of humor. He didn't laugh at anything I said when I was there. And I just kept thinking, I'm just not funny, He's a very serious person, very, very knowledgeable. And, but you know, I mean, it is a cause for concern. I mean, you know, and I've seen people that have gone out Bigfoot hunting with just a camera and you know, basically just a camera.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what happens if you get lost out there and stuck? I mean, what are you gonna do? You know, well, I got my knife. You know, I mean, it's gonna be, you're gonna need more than a knife. I went out with a radio crew one time on a Bigfoot hunt, and this one guy, he brought all this ninja equipment out there. And he was dressed up head to toe as a ninja, had his knife and all this, and he got up, he climbed up into a tree, and he was gonna wait for a Bigfoot to show up, you know, and needless to say, he ended up falling out of the tree, you know, and you know,
that didn't work out.
No, it didn't, you know, and he broke his sword, and that, you know, so I mean, but again, you know, you being in the military, you know, I just know what to take out there and what not to take out there. And I always make sure I know where I'm going. As well as, you know, using the GPS. I always tell to take a map with me, because, you know, I found being in the military, batteries run out, and when the battery goes out, your GPS isn't working anymore. So you have to rely on your map and a compass. And but I mean, you know, like I said, I take precautions. I mean, I don't, you know, I remember I was with this one group, the BRFO, and they had some kids, these young guys out there, and they didn't know anything about being in the woods, you know. And I came walking up on them, and they had these two gigantic logs, and with a Bic lighter. And they were, you know, from California. Yeah, and they were like, and I said, "What do you guys do?" He said, "Dude, we're making a fire, man. We're gonna get us a big old fire." And I said, "Okay." And I sat there and I watched for a little while. They're like, "Dude, what's going on, man? This ain't happening." And I said, "Can I help you guys?" He goes, "Yeah, man. We'll take any help we can get." So I said, "Well, move this out of the way." And I said, "Let's get some small twigs. Let's get this going. All right, let's get a fire and all this stuff. Give me that lighter." "Oh, dude, my lighter don't work." "Well, okay. Well, let's do a ferrule rod. We'll do this." And they're watching me with, you know, and we get it go. And one of them goes, "Dude, you're like a fire god, man." But I mean, they were great. They took, and when I took them out on the Florida trails, what they didn't know is that all the trails are marked with these little orange squares that are on the trees. So we're walking through the woods, and I look up, I see the triangles, and there's fine. You know, one of them said, "Dude, where are you going, man? You're like a down your boon, dude. You like know where you're going." And I kept thinking, should I tell them, or should I have them think I'm just an awesome outdoor person, you know? But I just said, "No, guys." I looked, I said, "See the orange triangles? You know, that's as it shows the trail." And they're like, "Oh, okay. That's what those are, man. I thought somebody got loose with spray paint or something." You know?
I think your book's very good in that capacity. The fact that it makes sure people are prepared when they go out there, and you recommend this is the gear you need. And you're right. There's probably a lot of people who think they just need to take a video camera and maybe, I don't know, a knocking stick or something while they're going out to find Bigfoot, right? So I think there's real value in that as well for people who seriously want to get out there, particularly if they're taking your family or taking their family with them, you know, to be ready for those kinds.
Well, I learned that when I go out with some people and they bring out their young kids, I put on what they call a survival safety necklace on the kids, and on it is a whistle, a flashlight, and some of the kids might put a little knife or something to make them feel kind of outdoorsy. Because the reason is, if they do get lost, I tell them, you stop right there and just start blowing that whistle. You know, and if we're at night, turn on that light, because we have night vision goggles, and night vision goggles amplify any kind of light out there. Luckily, we've never had that. The kids I've taken out there, I've always, you know, done what I asked them to, and they, you know, and we always let them do stuff. We let them do you know, we hand one of them the stick so they can do the wood knocks, and we'll let some of them use the GPS and the thermos, so they make them feel like they're part of the investigation as well.
It must be an incredible thrill for kids to do that, I would think.
Oh, they love it. I had a while back, a long time ago, when I was doing a thing with Charlie Carlson, the author of Weird Florida. After I'd finished doing my presentation, this guy came up to me and says, "Hey, listen, I want to go take my son out and go camping and go fishing and stuff, but he just wants to stay home and do video games and TV. But I want to get him out there to do this stuff, you know. And I mean, you were talking, you get your kids to go out with you and do this." I said, "Well, do this. Next time you want to go out, go up to your son and say, 'Hey, son, you want to go on a Bigfoot hunt?'" You know. I mean, and I grant you, you can still do the fishing, you know, but you're going to have to take him out Bigfoot hunting, because if you don't, you're a liar.
Yeah.
You know. But he wrote me later on an email saying, "Hey, thank you. It works. You know, we go out camping, and you know, in the daytime we go fishing. At night we go walking around with our night vision goggles looking for Bigfoot, and we're having a great time."
Yeah, I was fascinated with the cryptid stuff, also the UFO stuff. But before I keep asking questions, I'm sure Jan wants to talk a little bit about paranormal investigations, and because that's what she's a paranormal investigator. So that aspect of what Robert does is probably of most interest to you, I assume, Jan.
Sure. Have you been on several paranormal investigations?
I have, and you know, it's funny how I got involved in it with my wife. My wife, you know, got. You know, the Ghost Hunter show came on, and then she met some people that did, you know, some paranormal, and then she got into it full. And the thing is that how we even came up with the term legend tripping was, I used to primarily do Bigfoot hunting, and she did the ghost hunting. But she would come out with me to go do the Bigfoot hunts, and I would go with her to go do the paranormal. But she didn't want to be called a monster hunter, and I didn't want to be called a ghost hunter.
Right.
And we found out the term legend tripping, and we'll go, "Hey, we'll be legend trippers." Plus, we were both members of MUFON, the UFO, you know, organization. So, but yeah, I've been. She knows practically. Excuse me. She knows a lot of the investigators that. You know, paranormal. We're really good friends with Rob Demarest from Ghost Hunters International. We're really good friends with him. You know, I've been on it. I mean, unfortunately, I have a notorious habit of falling asleep at paranormal investigation, because you know, we get in there, we set up the cameras, and we'll go sit. You know, and sure enough, if something doesn't happen, I'm like, and my wife says I snore. I mean, you know, we went to this one place where supposedly there was a ghost of a naked lady, and I managed to stay awake for that one. But we didn't see her.
Yeah.
So I mean, I enjoy. I've noticed though, you know, because I've spoken at some paranormal conferences, is they are extremely serious about the whole thing, and they really sometimes don't have a sense of humor about the thing, you know. And because if you notice, I mean, I take what I do serious, but I don't take myself serious.
Yeah.
You know, you got to be able to be flexible, and you know, because you're in a field where there are a lot of people out there that do not believe in what you're doing.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I constantly get asked, you know, "Do you believe in ghosts? Do you believe in Bigfoot? Do you believe in UFOs?" I said, "Well, I guess the short answer is yes, I do. Otherwise, I wouldn't be out doing this stuff." You know, "Well, where's your proof?" You know, I said, "It's there. It may not be a proof that you know, you may not think it is, but you know, I found, you know, I've got, you know, castings of footprints. I've been with some people. My wife, during some of our paranormal investigations, has been touched, and you know, we've seen things move. I mean, we had an incident where Jupiter Lighthouse in Jupiter, Florida. Jupiter is where Burt Reynolds lived and retired and stuff, just to give you, you know. But we went to the lighthouse, and when we were at the top, and we heard something coming up the stairs. And I remember looking down, you know, and then I went down to see if I could figure out if it was the wind or something. And when I got to the area where the noise, you know, the noise was coming from, it stopped, and I kept going back down, and it started back up again. And you know, it's funny because I mean, I went all out to try to disprove it. You know, it's got to be a logical explanation. It's got to be the wind and all, and we couldn't. And then when we left, you know, I went up to the guy at the gift shop, and I said, "Yeah, we heard somebody coming up the stairs." He goes, "Oh yeah, that place is haunted." He says, "So you heard it, huh?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Usually we don't usually it doesn't happen during the daytime. It's usually at night. But he goes, that's really cool. I said, yeah, we've had people see a little girl in there. And I was like, holy cow, So I haven't seen anything, but I've heard some stuff.
You've heard them. You haven't felt anything?
Not yet. Not yet. We were we did a old abandoned prison, and only the females got touched. So that could just tell you something. That makes
sense right there. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, those ghosts have been incarcerated for a couple hundred years. You can't really blame them for that.
Yeah.
We've had some interesting EVPs and recordings. We did a Bartow High School, which is still has buildings from the 1800s there, and we got permission from the principal. He gave us the keys. We went in one night because we were told by the custodial workers that they won't stay in that one part of the building at night because they hear all these noises and talking. So they clean that during the daytime and they go to the new part at night. So we were there, and lo and behold, when we got back and my wife started going through the recordings, you could hear somebody over there talking. And again, there was nobody in the building but us. So I mean, and we were out one time. I took some ghost hunters on a Bigfoot hunt, and my wife, at the end said, "Oh, could you take out some of your ghost hunting?" Because she said I didn't bring mine. And we went to this old bridge, and they brought the voice box out, and the voice box said my wife's name, Tracy, on it, and that just. My wife just went, holy cow, it just said my name.
Yeah.
So. And I tell you, and it's neat because ghost hunters do enjoy going on Bigfoot hunts, and and then I've seen some cryptozoologists enjoy doing a paranormal.
Yeah.
So and then once you do that, you become a legend tripper.
Yeah.
And then of course there's your UFO hunting as well.
Yes.
That other angle of it. And I enjoyed all of that. I have a particular interest in UFO belief. It's kind of my, I guess, academic background. And so I'm always curious of the ability, though, to go somewhere to see something UFO-wise. I did, I guess, a legend trip when I was back in my university days. And you talked about the place in your international book. I went to the Blue Mountains where there's all kinds of activity.
Yes.
So I went there to see UFOs, and we saw some strange blue light flashings. We didn't see any discs in the sky, but often, because I think of the nature perhaps of UFOs, sometimes it's harder to estimate where they might be or where they might land, as opposed to maybe like the Falk monster or something. So maybe you could tell the audience how you approach that kind of aspect of legend hunting, the UFO angle.
Well, that is one of the hardest things about UFO sightings, because most of the time you're not going to get it again. I mean, there are rare occurrences where the lights have been seen again the next night. And I found when I was briefly an investigator with MUFON, but I kept getting some really interesting characters to interview and stuff. I've been abducted by aliens, so seems like everyone I interviewed had been abducted.
Oh wow,
they're busy, those ETs, that abduction program.
I tell you, but I should joke, because I do believe there are some abductions out there that have merit. So don't think I'm making fun of people. There are some that I do question, but there are some out there which I believe something happened.
Yeah.
But UFO, there's not. You really, don't ever think, okay, the UFO was seen, it's not going to be there the next night. You don't know that. You always need to go back out there. And I found that as an investigator with MUFON, you got to go back out there, because you might just see it. Like you brought up the Brown Mountain Lights. I mean, that whole area has got a rich history, and it's like a legend tripper's dream. You got the Brown Mountain Lights. There've been Bigfoot sightings out there. There's UFO sightings. There's supposedly paranormal activity. I mean, supposedly, the legend has it that the Brown Mountain Lights are paranormal in nature. And it's funny, when I took my wife up there, we were on our way up to the Mothman Festival, and we just happened to be passing, and we stayed that night. And I said, I'm going to take you up. We're going to go see the Brown Mountain Lights. And this is 9 o'clock at night, and she really wasn't in the mood to get back in the vehicle after traveling all day and go back up there. But she said, "Fine, we'll go." But the whole time she kept saying, "I swear to God, Rob, if we get up there, there's no lights. I'm going to push you off the cliff," And and the whole time I'm going up there, I'm saying, "Oh God, I hope these lights show," because they're not, they don't come out every night. I mean, they don't. So we got up there. And it's a good thing I had a Jeep driving up that hill, because I mean the road is, I mean, it was not a very good, well kept road. We got up there, and we got over, and there's a place they made out of concrete where you can go, an observation area where you can go see. And we were out there, and sure enough, the lights appeared, and I brought my night vision goggles, and it was just. And my wife was just like, "Wow, that's really cool," And I was like, "Thank you, God, for letting the brown lights come out." But and I mean, that whole area is just, I wish I could have stayed longer, because I really would have liked to have gone hiking a little bit through the woods and all that, maybe do a camp out and stuff, because it's a neat area.
Yeah, the brown mountain lights, like the Blue Mountains in Sydney, or like Point Pleasant back in the day, there seem to be these, either they can be long-lasting window areas or they can be briefer. I mean, as John Keel obviously was the person who introduced that concept of window areas, and is the person most responsible for popularizing the Mothman encounter. But again, that's why I think there is this blur between all of this different phenomena, when people can see, tall Bigfoot type creatures, and they can see strange lights, and they can see UFOs, and then they might experience poltergeist type phenomenon when they return home. So it's something that always makes me suspect that the phenomenon, and I just use phenomenon applying to everything, it might be more connected than a lot of the different groups within the broader paranormal like to think of it being connected.
I'm a big fan of John Keel. That was the other author I went to bring up, that I read his books, Jado. If you've ever want to read a really neat travel log, I mean, he goes over there into India to go investigate the whole legend of the
rope climbers.
The rope climbers, yes. And he actually goes on a Yeti hunt. He gets wind of the Yeti, and he gets out, and he does see something in the distance. And I tell you, I've read that book twice. And when I was a kid, and every so often I will pick it up and like in the summertime, and I'll reread it again. And it's just, it's one of my favorite books.
Oh, nice. We should talk also about, in many ways, your international legend tripping book. I think you even mentioned in there, it's kind of like your bucket list of all the places that you'd like to go. What are some of your very top ones? Like, what are a few of the top things you'd like to do in internationally that you haven't done yet?
If I was to, if they walked up and said, "Hey, what's the one thing you do?" It'd be Nepal. Kathmandu, and go up there, and possibly, if we could, go look for the do a Yeti investigation. I mean, I just I watched the special where Josh Gates from his TV show, and I just like to watch the show with just total envy. Just, I wish I was there. It just looks like such a neat place to go look at. And, the story of the Yeti is just, it goes back centuries, but there's other things that around Nepal and all that stuff that have got, legends around it too, The second one would be Loch Ness, mostly because I want to get my wife up and go see Loch Ness. I want to go see I boogered this up, Machu Picchu.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I always booger that up.
It's a hard word.
Never say it right. And it's funny when I'm talking to David Childress, I'll say it and he corrects me, and I can hear him getting irritated. He's just like, "Are you ever going to get it right?" I'd like to see the Aztec lines, from above.
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to get down to Australia and hook up with my friends down there and go look for the Yowie. I mean, I've been to Ecuador, and I've saw, a little bit of the Amazon, and I'm trying to think some other things I want to go to.
There's so many.
I want to go to Singapore. Singapore's got some awesome haunted places. There's a old haunted hospital over there that's just anytime investigation has gone in there, they had stuff happen. And I mean, they've had stuff happen so bad they've had to go, run out of there. Now, the government had to put a fence up to stop people from getting hurt going in there. But they let film crews go in there, to do stories and stuff. But and I made friends with the ghost hunting group out of Singapore, so they told me if I'm ever there to look them up, and they would take me over there to this hospital.
Oh,
nice.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, I mean, and I do. You're right. The book is basically, and I, as a bucket list, and I tell people, with this, the pandemic going on, this is a time to make a bucket list because I mean,
oh yeah,
I'm hoping this thing is eventually going to go away. I guess is where we can take our masks off and we can start traveling to other countries again. But when it does happen, people are going to want to. Well, what do I do now? And my book's a good thing to look at, as far as, oh, we should see that. And, one of the things I like to do when I'm even traveling is to look for things on the way there. Like I'm notorious for finding a Ripley's Believe It or Not, which my wife will tell you, oh, God, are we going to another one? I said, yeah, there's one on the way, Trace. My wife says, you're the ultimate tourist. You always go find these weird spots on the way when we go to places, So, and that's kind of how I made my book. So if you have it with you and you're out looking, okay, we're going to Australia. Ooh, we can go here. Look at this, Oh, we're going over to, Italy. Holy cow. Italy's got a bunch of places to go look at too, or Germany and England, and I mean, up in Scotland. I mean, it's just, this whole world of ours is just, it's so weird.
Our Haunted Planet, as John Keel called one of his books.
Yes. I mean, there is stuff all over the place. I mean, there is a Bigfoot seen almost all over the world. The only place I know Bigfoot has not been seen is in Hawaii. But they do have a small little gnome creature. And if you ever watched that movie Moana, you remember?
Yes.
You remember the little things in the coconuts? That's, well, I mean, they're not in coconuts, but that was them touching on that legend of those the little people that live in the Hawaiian Islands and stuff. So I mean, I was taken back by some of the dog man. We have stories of and I always get asked, well, what's the difference between a werewolf and a dog man? A werewolf is a supernatural creature where a person has transformed into a wolf, almost like a skinwalker. Whereas a dog man is a creature that's pretty much just a bipedal canine type creature. And again, I was researching that, and holy cow, they're seen all over the world too. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's reports of them in Australia.
I actually didn't know that. Okay, and I'm from Australia. So there you go.
And again, is it some people say, oh, it's just mistaken identity. They're actually seeing a Yowie versus which is Australia's version of Bigfoot. Which just recently there was a video that just popped up on from some investigators down there of a Yowie that they had on a recorded on a thermo, and it looks pretty darn good. I have mermaids. I know this sounds really funny, which I call them aquatic humanoids, just to make myself feel better. It's not saying mermaids, because I have I have daughters and I have a little granddaughter, and so, and I always have to watch The Little Mermaid every now and then.
Yes, Ariel.
Yeah, Ariel. So anyway, but researching it, there are legends out there of aquatic humanoids. People have seen these human-looking things in the water, that aren't manatees, that aren't, So I mean, it's interesting. The stuff that like I said, I had a hard time coming to a halt in that book. Because, you have to eventually get to a point where you say, well, okay, we got to stop here because we have a deadline. We got to get the book out, And David said, Rob, no more. Stop. But I found another haunted place I want to put in there, and, buried treasure or lost treasures.
We didn't even get to that. I mean, the book has so many leads. And I think you're right about the value of these books, particularly during the pandemic, when the world seems to have just collapsed onto itself, and we live in all these small personal spaces. You read this and you remember how big and wonderful and enticing the world is with its mystery and its strangeness. And it makes you want to get out there, and it makes you want to see these things.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of this stuff's easy to see, and it doesn't take a lot of money to go do it, you know. Ghost hunting, Bigfoot hunting, doesn't take any money. And I mean, like you said, this is a awesome planet we live in, and not everything can be explained, contrary to what scientists tell you. You know, I mean, I've even had a scientist tell me there's nothing in science saying there can't be a Bigfoot creature. He says, we just haven't found one. He goes, that's why I have you out there to find it for me. So once you find it, we're taking it away from you. And I said, oh, okay.
Well, that's the true Fordian position. Everybody forgets. I mean, I love Charles Fort. He's a massive influence on me, obviously. But people tend to remember Charles Fort for one of the things that he did, much like Ripley, in that he collated strange stories, perhaps more supernatural than the ones Ripley collated, but he's still a collator of strange tales. But his main intellectual push was a criticism of all orthodoxies and of science in particular. So he felt that science had failed. The damned data, as he called it, of whatever. Now we would have Bigfoots and UFOs. Back then it might have been falling fish and strange lights in the sky. Oh, there you go. So, you're totally on board the Fort train.
I keep it right next to my computer because every now and then I have to go, I see something and I grab the book and have to, you know, I said, holy cow, I mean, great books, you know,
But speaking of books, I have your wonderful legend tripping here, and I was you and your publisher were kind enough to give me a PDF of international legend tripping, so I don't have a physical copy of that. But as we're starting to wind up, maybe you could let people know how they can get your books and how they can check out more about you as well.
Well, my book, I have Legend Tripping: The Ultimate Adventure, and my new one, International Legend Tripping: The Adventure Outside the Box. Both of them are published by Adventures Unlimited Press. That's David Childress's publishing company, which he also has a lot of other books there by him and other people. And it's also available on Amazon. You know, I do have some conferences I'm coming up on, and if you do see me, by all means, come see me, and I will love to sign the book for you. And I love to hear stories from, you know, I love to hear new stories, especially sightings and stuff like that. I've geared the books. If you have children 10 or older, and I didn't put anything in the book, you know, that is offensive or, you know, would scare a child, you know, I do have, I've had some people tell me, you know, what's a good age to take a young adult on a paranormal investigation, and I say the teens. And the reason is for you know, to take a young child involved in that, they don't know, you know, it can mess with them.
Yes.
Whereas a young adults, they've all watched these ghost hunting shows. They can handle it better than a child who can't. So and you'll see it in my book too. So it's a good age, and I say probably about 13. You know, but
I thought there was real wisdom in there, particularly when you were talking about going on specter hunting or paranormal investigations, that it might be something which is too disturbing for children, and also that often these entities are attracted, it seems to be, to children as well. So I like that there was that caveat in that book.
It does happen, you know. I stay away from the whole devil worship because that's not paranormal. That's, you know, I don't deal with that. I've as a military policeman, I've had to deal with some of those people. I'm not putting it down. I just don't touch it, you know, and I don't go near it in my books. You know, I do talk about the different kind of ghosts that, you know, you do have poltergeists, you do have, you know, dark entities. You know, you definitely do not want to take children if you got you know, a dark entity or anything like that. But I've been out with some ghost hunts where we've had some, you know, teenagers with them, and they behaved themselves and they took a general interest and they did exactly what we asked them to do. You know, they didn't, you know, I've had some adults go out there and just get all silly on me, you know, and it's like, you know.
I can imagine, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, I went with this one group, and the lady had an app on her phone, this ghost hunting app.
Uh-oh, the apps.
Yeah, and I looked at it, and I just I think that's a game. You know, I don't think it's a real app. But she was all into it, and I didn't really have the heart to, be, upset her. So I sat there and just watched her the whole time, but I kept thinking, that's not doing it. It's not, I don't think so. I don't think so. But but again, people, if it gets their enthusiasm to go out and do this stuff, I'm all for it. You know, I mean, I've seen people that have never been out in the woods, and I've taken them out Bigfoot hunting, and they just enjoyed everything. They, did what I told them to, what to bring and how to act, and not to go do certain things. Don't wander off by yourself or any of that. I mean, and with the paranormal, same thing. The treasure hunting, that the only thing is that you have to obey state laws, and Florida has some really stringent state laws when it comes to because we have a lot of buried treasure still not recovered here in Florida.
Yeah, I did. I didn't know until I read your. I didn't know until I read your book that there were all these various licenses you needed to dig for buried treasure and various income tax responsibilities and the cut you had to give the state. But on that, speaking of treasure, and we're probably going to have to go, but do we have another treasure from you coming? Is there another book that you're working on or something else down the track we can expect?
I have a couple ideas. One, I haven't really, I don't want to put it out yet because I have to go talk to some people about it.
Okay.
But I have an idea for a third book, and we'll see where it goes. I have started doing. A while back, I was doing research, doing a book on the Florida Skunk Cape, and fortunately I ran into when the pandemic, I wasn't able to go to certain places, because some of these libraries and stuff shut down, so I couldn't get in there and look at their files and stuff. But the book's still there. I just haven't finished it yet.
Well, whenever you've got another book out, we'd love to have you back, Robert, because you were a great guest. Thank you so much for coming on Talking Weird.
Well, thank you. I had a great time.
Oh, we did too. And keep it weird.
Yeah.
Always.
Keep it weird.
Thank you for joining us tonight. If you're interested in checking out more episodes, you can find us at talkingweird.com. If you haven't already, please like the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Talking Weird Podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to Talking Weird. We're available on most podcast platforms and YouTube. And if you do enjoy the show, please leave us a review. Dean and I would really appreciate it. Until then, stay safe and keep it weird.